Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show Terminology Special. My name is Daryl Grove and I'm joined by Professor Emeritus of Spherical Objects, Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. What does Professor Emeritus mean?
I think it means you're sort of kind of retired, but they still keep you on. They still keep you on board.
Yeah, that sounds right.
That's how I see your role on the Total Soccer Show.
Yeah, I like that. Let's see my role on the actual, just the broader show. Just occasionally checked out. Got it. Awesome.
So today is Soccer Terminology 401. Mm-hmm. That's what we're calling it. That's the naming structure we've gone with.
Sure.
If you want to find any of our past terminology shows where we essentially explain soccer terms, football phrases, what they mean and how they got that name, why they mean what they mean, go to totalsoccershow.com/terminology. And you will find everything you're looking for, especially if you're looking for, can you guess what the most requested is?
Terminology-wise?
Yeah.
I feel like it's still the numbers.
Yep.
Is gonna be
what do the numbers mean?
Yeah.
What's a number 6? What's a number 8? Etc. Mm-hmm. It's there. totalsoccershow.com/terminology. And there's a list of the terms and the timestamp at which you can find it.
Nicely done, my
friend. But we have terms to define and discuss today, Taylor. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6... 6.5. 6.5 today.
It's your dedication to preparation that I really think impresses most people.
Hey, just because I left my notes at home and had to rewrite them when I got here.
And then count out the number of terms.
Well, I didn't know. Really so quickly. The last one, you'll know when you get there. The last one's like kind of not a terminology, but it's more of a, why do people say this?
Yeah.
Type question. All right, you ready to roll? You ready to get to the first one?
Sure.
Okay, so the first football term that people want described is Olimpico. Mm-hmm. Olimpico. So the way we've got this set up is Taylor's going to take a guess based on his general knowledge. You know, he's Professor Emeritus, so it should be pretty good. And then I've done some deep research to get to the real truth.
Yes. So my initial, we've gone with this before, but like my initial thought was that it probably like happened in an Olympic stadium, but there are too many Olympic stadiums.
Well, first, I mean, some people are really asking, what does Olimpico mean?
What does it
they don't even know what it is.
Yeah. You're right. We probably shouldn't jump straight to origin of a term that people don't know. Yeah, so
it's only a 401 class.
It's essentially when you score a goal, or it is when you score a goal directly from the corner kick.
Yep.
So Michael Bradley famously aims for this quite often, and I think has gotten it once.
He got it. When I looked, he did it once against Panama in 2015, and it was real sunny in the video, so I'm going to say it was a Gold Cup game.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But yeah, it's essentially just taking the corner kick and then no one else touching it, or maybe the goalkeeper trying to touch it, going straight from the corner into the back of the net.
Yeah, and I'd say Michael Bradley has got a weird vibe with this where he's going for that, but also they're stacking people at the post as well, so it's like half a cross, half a shot, and sometimes it goes straight in.
And it feels like, I could be wrong, but I feel like we haven't seen that in a while from Michael Bradley.
Yeah, no, I think
the United States has done different things.
I think maybe Bruce Arena frowns on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So my initial assumption, as I said, was that it probably happened in a stadium that had been an Olympic stadium at some point, but I'm going to say that's probably not specific enough. So I'm going to say it happened in an Olympics or with like an Olympic team.
So you're half right.
Okay.
This is really interesting. The very first Olimpico was scored by Cesario Anzari, who is an Argentinian.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess that he's an Argentinian with a lot of connections to Italy.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of Argentinians
I'm going to say that's
and were.
I'm going to say it's like Cesario.
Yeah, of course.
I guess, yeah.
Well, no, because it would be pronounced Spanish, right? So Cesario.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. Well, we're not here to discuss the pronunciation of his name. That's a whole other show. So it was not.
Oh, you're right. And actually, my pronunciation's wrong. Only with a double consonant does it take the ch. It's like catenaccio, not catenaccio. So I apologize. All right. My mistake.
Here's the big thing. It was in 1924 that Anzari scored the very first Olimpico, so named. It was not at the Olympics.
We've discussed this before. I just realized. I think, or at some point, you and I have had this question because did it used to be illegal to score straight from a corner kick?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. The rule was changed in 1924. So it was suddenly legal.
That's convenient.
To score from a corner kick. Officially, or like according to Scottish knowledge, the first person to do it was Billy Alston in the Scottish second division, but it wasn't quite as celebrated because it was a Scottish second division, right? When Anzari did it in 1924 for Argentina, it was known as an Olimpico not because it happened in the Olympics, but because it happened against Olympic champions Uruguay.
Oh, okay.
So here's the backstory. Uruguay won the 1924 Olympics. It was in Paris. Uruguay were the only South American team to go to the 1924 Olympics because there was only one spot. They beat Argentina in the playoff to get there. So after Uruguay won it, Argentina were like, we want another shot at you. Give us another game. We'll prove that we're better than you. Right? So it was a two-legged game. First leg was a tie. Second leg was won by Argentina with this Cesario Anzari goal.
All right,
he scored at the near post. which I think is almost a tougher Olimpico, right?
It's an aggressive Olimpico.
Yeah, it's an aggressive Olimpico, right? Yeah, bent in, inside the near post, no one else touched it. The Argentinian press was so excited by this goal that beat Uruguay, they called it the Olimpico goal, which essentially I understand to be sort of the goal that beat the Olympic champions, so really we're the Olympic champions now.
Yeah, that's how it works.
In a Somalian pirate kind of way.
Well, we have that as well with the unofficial World Cup champions.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
There you go.
Yeah. So, how about this then? Do you know there's only one person to ever score an Olimpico goal, a corner that goes directly in, at the Olympics?
I mean, I have no idea, but I'm going to take a shot in the dark, and I'm going to say, why not David Beckham?
Megan Rapinoe.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Megan Rapinoe scored so far the first and so far only Olimpico goal at the Olympics in the 2012 Olympics in London against Canada in that sort of glorious 4-3 semi-final win. I think this is the game where Abby Wambach counted off the 6 seconds for the goalkeeper. It was really, really dramatic.
I think briefly it was like a Rapinico or something like that. That's what people were trying to dub that one.
I'm all in on renaming it a Rapinico.
Can I just add, while we're on the subject of women's soccer players doing impressive things from corner kicks, I was rewatching the goals that France scored. I forget in what competition and against what team, but it's the one where they were doing like almost like the merry-go-round. They're doing like the merry-go-round and then they attacked the goal.
No, so this was actually recent. It was friendly against Spain.
There it is.
I think I found it on Reddit Soccer. Yeah, they do merry-go-round again, or carousel, I guess is what you would call it, right? Where they will spin around at the top of the box, and then as the corner comes in, they break, right?
It's
impossible to mark.
It's legitimately genius, yeah. Because not only do they break, it's not like they just all run to different areas, but they also do it in like the merry-go-round, like as though you're getting off the merry-go-round or the carousel. So they go like one by one, and it's really difficult to know who's going where.
And they all end up free. Oh, not all of them, but enough players end up free.
That ends in 2 goals,
2 goals, yeah. Definitely
amazing.
Go back in our Twitter feed and find this, because it's definitely worth seeing. I want to say, I think that goal is more impressive than an Olympico.
I think so too. Yeah. It requires that much like training and discipline versus an Olympico is just putting a lot of bend on the ball.
Okay, so I'm sure maybe the French press have already done it, but we should define that goal. And I was about to ask, what's the French for carousel? And I'm pretty sure carousel is a French word.
I'm still trying to come up with a clever joke about you saying French press. But I would also say carousel is probably French.
It is, right, yeah. So maybe it's the carousel corner kick routine.
Yeah.
That could work.
I like that.
All right. Someone please correct us if we got that wrong.
Well, speaking of impressive feats, we've got another term for you.
Yep.
It's Elastico. Daryl's going to guess this one. I kind of have an explanation.
Okay, so I know what it is. It's the flick-flack, right? Which is where you sort of take the ball one way but then bring it back the other way. And my guess is it's as simple as it's called the Elastico because it looks like elastic, as in it stretches one way, then stretches back the other way. And that's all I've got for you. I'm sorry.
I mean, that's basically it, because as far as I could see, there isn't really like, he said, the commentator said his ankles look like elastic or something. But it's essentially, it has lots of different names. They all kind of indicate the same thing. And it's when you take the ball with usually your dominant foot with the outside of your foot, and then you basically, in the same motion, bring your foot back around so you take it with the inside of your dominant foot, but all in one move. So it looks like basically your ankles are made of elastic.
And somehow, correct me if I'm wrong as well, because you're more of a skill player. I'm more of a tete in this situation.
I think I said literally in the last show that if I try to attempt this while dribbling, I will fall over. So, grain of salt there.
We talked last show about Neymar trying to do it to tete, right? But it's you push the ball away with the outside of your foot. It looks like it's going away, but then you somehow, this is the tricky part to me, is you get your foot over the other side of the ball and use the instep to drag it back towards you and in the other direction.
When you say over, I would say almost like around, because you're not like stepping over it. It's that you're bringing the foot around.
I can't do it. I genuinely tried to put my foot over it.
Yeah, don't do that. But it's part of, and that's kind of what makes it such a skillful move, is because you have to have that sort of initial drive to make the defender think, oh, he's taking it with the outside of his foot. But you've got to have that speed and ability to then bring the foot back around and cause problems.
So you've got to really sell it, like, I'm definitely going in this direction, but then you snap the elastic band back really quick and bring it back towards you.
So a quick bit of history, Rivellino is the one who made the move famous, but he learned it from one of his Corinthians teammates, Sergio Echigo, something like that. I was confused because I guess Echigo played in Japan, but before he went to Japan, somehow Rivellino called him Japanese. I don't fully understand that, but he basically saw him do it and said, hey, Japanese, what was that?
Is it because Rivellino can see the future?
Sure, that's probably it.
It would explain a lot.
He was taught it, and then that became Rivellino's like signature move. This was in 1964. So Rivellino's quote about that move is, he invented it, I perfected it.
Oh!
yeah, a lot of confidence. So, but it's been called, as you said, the flick-flack, the flip-flap, the elastico. It's called the snake bite. which
who calls it the snake bite?
I feel like that's the common way of describing it in Africa, and then it's el culebrita as well, which is the snake bite in South American countries too.
Okay, so why do African countries, South American countries call it also the snake bite?
Because apparently, like the way because of the way your foot moves, it sort of goes from one side and then like slips back to the other really fast. So it's almost like a snake bite. The way you kind of move quickly.
It's like when a snake strikes. Yeah.
Yep.
Man.
Yeah, we should change it to the snake strike.
The snake strike.
Yeah.
The only man immune again is Tete. He can fend off a snake bite and an elastic band snip.
And more recently, well said. More recently, it's also called the gaucho. Can you guess why?
Gaucho. Ronaldinho.
Correct.
Ronaldinho Gaucho.
Yeah. Gosh, yeah. Portuguese is hard.
It's right.
But yes, that is correct. That it became one of Ronaldinho's preferred moves, and he's the one that I think probably not necessarily brought it back into prominence because it's never fallen out, but it's the one that I think we identify with him most commonly.
He's the first one to do it after YouTube was a thing.
That is a fair statement.
Go.
Yes.
So there's some 2006 Ronaldinho Elasticos that are happening. I really think that's what happened.
You're one of those guys now, you know that, right? That you learned how to pronounce something. You're like,
I did it with a...
It's time for me to say Barcelona.
I did it with an implied wink.
Yes.
Okay, up next. Someone wanted to know, actually many people wanted to know, what does the empty bucket mean? Like, we've mentioned it on the show a few times. A lot of people talk about the empty bucket formation. What is it and why is it called that? Again, I've done some deep but unsatisfying research on this, but I invite you to guess first, Taylor.
All right. Well, the empty bucket is essentially... I don't know why I always say essentially. I think it's my way of making it like, just in case I'm wrong.
In case you're missing some details.
It's a 4-4-2.
Yep.
You've got your two central midfielders, but you've got your two wide midfielders pushed further ahead.
Yep.
So basically, if you draw that shape, it looks like a U, and I guess people like to think that that's a bucket.
Yep.
I think it's also called an empty bucket because, as we all know, everyone loves to carry the silverware they win around with them in buckets, and if you use the 4-4-2 empty bucket, your bucket will remain empty. Because it doesn't work and it's stupid.
I'm not sure about that last part. But
I might have made that part up.
Okay, so yes, it's called the empty bucket because if you think of a four-man midfield in a 4-4-2, imagine the two central midfielders stay deep. So the midfielders stay low on the field. The wingers are attacking and high.
And for sake of argument, let's just say those two midfielders are, I don't know, Michael Bradley and Kellen Acosta. Okay.
Well, so here's the interesting part.
Yeah.
So now I'm hoping everybody listening now understands the shape of the empty bucket.
Yeah.
Two low central midfielders, two high attacking wingers. Theoretically, you're giving the wingers a lot more freedom to attack because the two midfielders are holding it down in the middle, right? This phrase first came to prominence, it seems to me, in the United States during Bob Bradley's reign as US men's national team manager. Because the thing he did a lot was have, I think, Michael Bradley and like Maurice Edu or Ricardo Clark or someone else. He would have two holding midfielders. And then he would have Donovan and Dempsey essentially as free wingers, right? And then it was like, say, Charlie Davis and Josie Altidore up top. So it was designed, I think, to have Donovan and Dempsey in attacking wide positions, but to give them space to sort of freedom to move around a little bit.
Yeah, and my guess would be that it's probably, if there is a term for this elsewhere, it's probably a fairly common term that like doesn't really... Like I doubt other people are calling it an empty bucket. I think that's probably just because it's something that Americans were calling it. Does that make any sense?
That's exactly it. So the only other sort of nod to this I could find is in Brazil, where they call it the double six. They call it the double six because essentially in the empty bucket, the two midfielders are not two creative midfielders. It's two defensive midfielders, right? So they call it the double six because it's two defensive midfielders who are not tasked with any playmaking or attacking. They're just tasked with sitting there and holding. But what I'm really interested in is why did the US media and US fans not call it the double six? Why was it empty bucket? And I really think this is the beginning of people turning against Bob Bradley, is they gave his favourite formation a kind of not friendly name, right? Because it's not... Normally formations, you give them names that... imply their strength, right? An empty bucket implies there's something missing.
Well, I would say, actually, for me, it sounds more like people getting more and more interested in tactics and formations.
Oh, okay.
And if you say, oh, they're playing a 4-4-2, but if you look at somebody who's playing a 4-4-2, you think like 4 and then a flat 4, right? You can see those like two lines of 4.
So you're saying it's just to describe the difference between that and what Bob Bradley was doing?
I think so. Yeah. And I think that we're Americans. So like, does two sixes, or does a double six really work? People don't really know what that means.
Okay.
Would you say like a vase? That's probably a more accurate shape. Or like, but like, I don't know if people are going to go with that one. I think bucket is the one that people can most understand. Vase, if you will.
The Bob vase.
Yeah, the Bob vase.
So
a vase refrigeration.
The weird problem with it was always that there's no attacking midfielder, right? You're either relying on your wingers to sort of come inside and do some attacking midfieldering, or you rely on one of the strikers to come back and fill that hole. That was always the criticism,
Yeah.
right? Is that there was no attacking midfielder, and also that in that big gap, you still give the other team a lot of room to play. And just to give you a bit more historical research, I really did go back as far as I could. The earliest article I could find, the earliest mention, and Jim Broshar found this on Twitter as well, is a 2008 Big Soccer forum sort of chat about it. So I want to say that it's very possible this phrase was invented on the Big Soccer boards, which would be very 2008.
Yeah, and so to go, to go back to what I was trying to say and then I think failed to say, I think it's so common that like people utilize this formation, have used it throughout history, that it hasn't necessarily like needed a specific name, and that's why I'm sure if you go to Italy, they've got a different kind of term for it, or it might just be 4-4-2 or something. But like I think
double regista, maybe they call it.
Something. But I feel like empty bucket, while it is like that's a uniquely American phrasing, that I just don't want that to imply that like, and Americans are the ones who came up with this concept of like two sixes.
But I really think they might have come up with the phrase.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
And also, now think about it, I'm just thinking of this in the moment, there's an element of this formation relies a lot on hard physical work, and carrying a bucket is hard physical work.
And I also wonder if it also factors in those front two that you mentioned, because like are the front two the handle that like hold it all together?
Kind of, yeah.
Carry your pail around it? Or have I made that into like a 2-year-old's like sandbox bucket?
They handled Spain in the 2009 Confederations Cup semi-final.
Well done. Slight applause for you. Slight applause. Let's move on to another term, shall we?
Well, one thing I just want to clarify
we
is
shall not.
It could look similar to a double pivot, right? Because you think of a double pivot, that's just two deep-lying playmakers. But the idea of the empty bucket is those guys are just defensive midfielders.
Yep. All right, next one for you, Dogrove. Have a guess, and I will give you my researched but kind of incomplete answer.
Okay.
What is a howler?
Oh, okay. It's a magazine. No. So a howler is, in my understanding, a goalkeeper error, right? People will say, the keeper's had a howler there. Or that's a howler from the keeper, like a laughable goalkeeping error. And I'm going to guess that it's a howler because people who see it will howl with laughter while watching this sort of comical mistake.
Well, so you're right.
Thank you.
In spirit.
End of show.
But it's not necessarily, you usually hear it in relation to a goalkeeper, but anybody can have a howler. Like if a forward misses 2 sitters, he might have had a howler of a game.
Oh, okay.
But you're correct that
laughable?
Yeah, it relates to a very obvious mistake.
Okay.
So if you go with the dictionary definition, it's a mistake, especially an embarrassing one in speech or writing.
Oh, so it's not soccer specific?
No. So that's the key thing there. And so there's a couple different explanations.
Like NYCFC Stadium, it's not soccer specific.
Yes. So there's 2 possible explanations, both of them originating in like the mid 1850s, which is that either, to your point, like it is so bad that it makes everyone howl with anger or howl with laughter.
Yeah.
But the other one is that it's so obvious that it like the performance was so bad that it cries out for attention, that it like screams for attention, that it screams to be noticed.
So the thing itself, thing itself is a howler.
So it's either the performance itself makes people howl,
or
the performance itself was so glaringly bad that it can't be like unnoticed, it has to be heard. It's a howler.
All right, it is a howler.
But the key point there is that it's just a very bad game or a very bad performance. I would say like one. Well, that's the strange thing about it, right? Because you can have like, he's had a howler there if it goes between the goalkeeper's legs, or it could be like, he drops the ball, he puts it out for a corner when he didn't need to, he passes it to the wrong player. That like overall performance can also be considered a howler. So it can be one specific incident or a whole game.
So it can be an individual moment or 90 minutes of laughable.
Yeah. There it is.
All right, speaking of howlers, today's show is sponsored by Howler Magazine. Howler are doing this sort of 1-week deal exclusively through the Total Soccer Show. If you go to fifa.wtf/gethowler, the link will be in the show notes. Use the discount code TSS2, the letters TSS, the number 2. You will get 20% off a 1-year subscription to Howler Magazine. It is the best possible deal, but it can only last a week or we'll put Howler out of business.
I mean, we might. That's a very good deal, and I feel like a lot of people want a lot of varying soccer content in the sense that they cover lots of different issues.
And last time we offered this deal and a lot of people were like, and then they got, I think, a couple of days after the deal expired and they were like, can I still get that deal? The answer is no. If you don't do it by Friday, it is too late. You cannot get this deal.
So shall we talk about some of the articles available?
Yeah, so Judge Qureshi very kindly sent us the PDF of an article titled, it's a feature article, it's called inside Gianni Infantino's evil plot to expand the World Cup and make FIFA $1 billion, in italics, dollars by Jamil Chade.
That one really wrote itself there. Because it really was, it does say, like, specifically in this plan that's come to light, that, they're going to make $1 billion more. Gianni Infantino is kind of bald. You can imagine him putting that pinky finger
to
the face, so it all makes sense.
So I'm going to say Jamil Chade and, Howler magazine have taken a strong editorial stance on the 48-team World Cup here.
I would say so. Yeah, in that they are not for it?
Yeah. So could you briefly sum up sort of what's going on in this article, so in case people want to read it?
Sure. So I guess when FIFA were initially kind of doing the background investigation into how to expand the World Cup, they had I think this big document that kind of went through a lot of the different permutations and possibilities.
Not a public document.
That had not been made public. And that is kind of a FIFA thing. They tend to seal off documents that they don't want people to know about. In this case, they
say no look on them.
No look, exactly.
You no look.
But I think like on the one hand, it's very interesting because it gives you specific information about what was going on and some of the decisions and how the decisions were made. But on the other hand, it is sort of like, it's FIFA. Like, I'm just not surprised that they're like, oh yeah, this isn't the best format, but it's the one we want to use.
Well, but back up. How is this document featured in this Howler magazine article?
How do you mean?
Well, I mean, how someone had access to it? My understanding was that Jamil Chade sort of somehow got to see this document and is reporting on what he's seen.
I believe his line, to paraphrase it, is like when you report about the governance and laws of FIFA for over 20 years, you tend to make contacts, you tend to gain the trust of some officials, and so in this case, I think one of the officials who had this document gave it to Jamil.
So there we go. Yeah, you will probably get some sort of inside info about the 48-team World Cup that you did not know before reading this article. I don't want to spoil too much.
I mean, I'll spoil it because I've already alluded to it, so I'll spoil this part, which is that the format they eventually landed on was not like the best one. The best one that they could possibly go with in terms of like creating the most drama, keeping the biggest teams involved, but having the best competitive matches is the current format.
So according to what their own, from what I understand, they ran simulations or calculations.
10,000 simulations, I think it was.
It's a lot of Football Manager.
Yeah, and it basically, the current 32-team format is the one that gives you like the least likelihood of having dead rubbers, but the most drama, the most excitement, and the most teams to allow for that drama and excitement. And then the more teams you add, the more wrinkles you put in, the more problematic it becomes.
And the problem seems to be the 48-team World Cup and the 3-team group stage, because that creates the possibility for those dead rubber games, meaning games that sort of either don't matter or only one team matters.
And there are other reasons, varying reasons as to why they ended up going with that format. But to find out those, you have to read the article.
Final thing I'll say on this is I'm still kind of in favour of the 48-team World Cup. I think more teams in the World Cup is fine, but seeing some of the stuff in this story has at least made me revisit and rethink, because my sort of naive optimistic reasons for wanting a 48-team World Cup are maybe not the same as FIFA's pinky in mouth reasons for wanting a 48-team World Cup.
I mean, yeah, I think that's it. And I think like it's sort of, you kind of, in my mind, you have to sort of separate them and think, is it an okay idea to have 48 teams there and like include more countries, change the way people qualify, get people who've never been there, countries that have never been there, you grow the game more? Like, yeah, that's a great idea. I'm in favor of that. But I think then, you have the other idea of like, but why they're doing it and how they're going to do it and what that kind of entails in the long run. And then it goes back to our other conversation where when you change something theoretically for the good, it can often have negative impacts that you're going to have to figure out later on. So, for example, I mean, it limits the number of countries who can host, because now you have to have more stadiums, you have to have more hotels, you have to have more facilities. It becomes a whole big thing.
But it's kind of hard to be against it when you realize that one of the countries that suddenly can host is the United States, with a little help from our friends North and South.
Yes.
All right, so once again, the article is Jamil Chade. It's inside Gianni Infantino's evil plot to expand the World Cup and make FIFA $1 billion.
I should add here, listeners, that Daryl has put his pinky to his mouth every time he says billion.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you got to fully commit, right?
Yeah. Although I think he says 100 billion, so now I don't know what to think.
He starts
anymore.
Off with 1 million, right?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, then he jumps significantly, yeah.
So once again, you go to FIFA.wtf/GetHowler. Get Howler is all one word. FIFA.wtf/GetHowler. The link will be in the show notes. Enter the discount code TSS2. You'll get 20% off. Offer expires on Friday. Do not delay.
There we are. Thank you to Howler Magazine for sponsoring today's show.
Yeah.
Joe Grove, thank you for doing some research into some terms, because we've got, 3 more to get to?
Yeah,
2.5 more to get to?
This next one, we keep the spreadsheet where people can enter the terms they would like to be described, and we have an optional, you can put your name or you can not put your name, right? So as I was doing this last night, one just appeared in front of me on the spreadsheet, and the term that this person wanted defined was pundit, and the name next to it was Alexi Lalas.
Yeah.
And I immediately thought, oh, someone's like messing around because of like Alexi Lalas' recent, what we're going to call it, his recent speech in the
diatribe,
diatribe about soft tattooed millionaires. But then we saw a tweet from Alexi Lalas, hey, I just left you guys one. And he's got the blue check mark, so we know it's him.
I think he just wrote done.
Done. That was it, sorry.
Yeah.
So, at Alexi's request, we'll try and sort of define the word pundit. We've both done research on this one, right?
We have. So before we get into like our understanding of what a pundit is, we'll go with the historical definition of what a pundit is, and it comes from either Sanskrit or Hindi, depending on your perspective, I'm guessing.
Let's say India.
Yeah, okay. And it's either pandita in Sanskrit, which means learned man, or Hindi, it would be pandit, which is something similar, essentially.
I saw another translation being knowledge holder.
Yeah. All of those. That always makes me laugh, because that's the literal definition of a computer in Turkey, is a bilgi sayar, which is a knowledge counter. I love that. But yes, and that's essentially what it is. I think the other...
Well, wait, let's back this up, though, because obviously those guys were not soccer experts, right?
No, they were.
They were knowledge holders.
No, they definitely were. That's it.
Of religious matters and matters of state. So the Pundita could sort of perform religious
I was with you.
ceremonies, or they advise rulers because they have a wealth of knowledge. They are people that you look to kind of explain things because they know things.
Yeah, and so it was first used in English, as far as I can tell, in the mid-17th century to refer to an Indian legal scholar. So a person who's like familiar with the laws of India, or of the Indian people, or of the indigenous people, that is.
Yep.
That's what they were going with. So as a pandita was like a person who knew the customs, knew the rituals, knew the beliefs, and was the learned person in that group.
Saw a similar... So you can see this phrase evolving. I saw a similar thing when the British Army, which was occupying India for far too long, and I apologise, when they were going into sort of uncharted territory, they would find someone local who had local knowledge, called a pundit, and ask them to sort of go out there and sort of be the lead party, so that the British Army weren't going into the unknown. So I think that's when it became sort of anglicised. It became just pundit. They started referring to this guy they would sort of ask to go and look into things armed with his local knowledge. Yep. And then it's worth explaining, because I feel like America might not know this, because a lot of American thoughts about the British Empire sort of centre on America.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But England was involved with India for a very, very long time, right? And it obviously is Britain colonising India, but it works both ways, right? Like some of the culture starts coming over to England, and that's why we ended up with the word in English pundit as someone who knows a lot about a specialist subject. So it's not a big leap from there to a football pundit.
Yeah. But you can have a pundit with anything, right? Like you have political pundits who tell you all about what's happening in politics. You have football pundits who tell you all about what's happening in football, or at least that's what they're supposed to do.
So I've got a bit more history for you.
Sure.
The first use of sort of what we think of now as a pundit, and almost what you would say Alexi Lalas is as a pundit, was the 1970 World Cup in England, where Jimmy Hill, who's this great sort of British pioneer, broadcaster, former player, had this idea: what if for the games we got in 4 players who aren't currently playing to give their expert opinion on what we've just seen? So instead of like the kind of more stuffy studio type stuff, you got current players and ex-players sitting around talking about what just happened from a player's perspective. And that's kind of essentially where punditry has evolved recently.
And that's where I would say it's evolved that way, but I would say that is now strangely kind of the pundit I don't necessarily enjoy. Because I think a lot of times if you're relying on personal experience, that's really useful.
Yeah.
But you also don't have personal experience of everything that's happened. So I think like for an example would be, I forget who it was who was like recently playing in, like maybe it was England playing in Georgia or like Wales or Northern Ireland or whatever. And I think Robbie Savage said like, oh, from my experience playing there, like it was always very difficult. He never played there. Like it was just sort of him like wanting to like talk about playing World Cup qualifiers.
Maybe he'd been elsewhere in Eastern Europe?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. But that's what I mean, is that like when you try to like put your own perspective on it, if you don't have that disclaimer of like, no, I never did this, but from my like there can be some crossover, but I think a lot of times it can take you down a dangerous path. Whereas there are other players who kind of put in that effort. I would say Jamie Carragher, Gary Neville, Alan Shearer, all very good pundits because they rely on their experience, but they also rely on knowledge and kind of continued analysis of the game.
And I would say
Alexi Lalas as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would say there are two types of pundit though. There are the guys who are just cashing in on their name, turning up for a paycheck, and then sort of walking. I think Michael Owen, not to name call, but he's on BT Sport, I believe, right now.
Who did he just call short
in England?
Not tall enough to play centre back, and he's like 6'4".
Yeah. Who was it?
Or 6'2". I can't remember, but it was just another one of those Michael Owen.
It's someone who was not short, and he obviously hadn't researched it, right? But there's a lot of people who just like they know they're a famous name. They can just walk into a studio, cash a check, say something about football, and people will listen to them because they scored a bunch of goals, and then they walk away, right? And that was Alan Shearer on Match of the Day for at least a couple of years. I remember when Newcastle signed Hatem Ben Arfa, he was like, who's even heard of this guy? And a bunch of like more educated British people were like, hey, here's who he's played for, here's what he does. And I think he's really worked hard to sort of do the groundwork, get some good like analysis chops, and now his segments on Match of the Day are genuinely very, very insightful.
Yeah, and actually I think they're even better because he still has that kind of like that Newcastle background of he doesn't use too many words if he doesn't have to, so it's like he does really good analysis and then pop bang lovely, and that's like and then like that's it for describing the like. I don't need you to explain the shooting mechanism as he does it. Yeah. I can watch that part, but I appreciate all the other insight that he provides.
I think I tweeted today that you should watch Schalke Bayern on Fox Sports 1, not just because Weston McKennie is starting. We don't know how that game's finished. It didn't start well. Let's put it that way. But the commentators were Keith Costigan and Stu Holden. So they occupy a weird spot where they are both announcers, because obviously they're calling that game, but then you also see them in studio sometimes being pundits. And I feel like that's kind of evolved in some way. People have gone from being sort of dedicated announcers to announcers / pundits. So you can be sort of behind a desk or just next to the game with a microphone.
Yeah, I think it can be either one. And I think it requires you to have that level of research and sort of interest in the game and the developments in like the broader game to have more of an opinion than just who's this guy coming from Barcelona? Oh, he's probably not very good. Because that is when Yaya Toure first came from Barcelona to Manchester City. I remember all those like, oh, he's never won anything. Oh, he's not that good.
Yeah,
like I don't even know who this guy is.
Just won the Champions League.
Clearly, you should get Jermaine Pennant.
So, what about the term pundit right now? Do you see it as an honorific that's sort of a compliment or more towards an insult? Because I see it used both ways, right? I
mean, I think it very much depends on who you're talking about, what the situation is, and how you're saying it. But I still think it's. I wouldn't say it's honorific, though. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a pejorative either. I think it can be right
is honorific always a pejorative?
What do you mean?
Isn't an honorific always a pejorative?
No. I'm saying I don't think it's like, oh, he's a pundit, and I also don't think it's like, oh, he's a pundit. Like I think it'd just be like the pundit said. Like it could just be like a descriptor.
I think I've got this weird thing in my head where maybe a pundit is someone who's a bit more hacky about it, like more in the Michael Owen mold, and whereas an analyst is more what you would call Gary Neville or Jamie Carragher.
Oh, okay. So you're
Do you know what I'm saying?
I got you. Okay. Cool.
I mean, well. Here's a question: what are we? We're podcasters.
I'm Taylor.
Are we pundits? Are we analysts? We occupy a weird space, I feel like, right now.
Yeah, we do. I don't know. We're podcasters. That's what I would say. Right. Yeah, because I do think, to go back to like the Alan Shearer point, I do also think part of it is like visuals are sort of necessary to be able to break it down to some extent, because otherwise you're just kind of giving.
But I do wave my arms around a lot.
This is very true, but I mean more so like the ability to, like you and I, for example, we will break down like, look how he shot that ball. He hit it here, and that's why he hit it this way. But a big part of that is because like people can't see the goal we're talking about, so it helps to break it down. And
we also assume that they have seen it in the past, right? Especially if it's like a US game where we'll go deep. We assume that somebody's watched that game and seen that goal at some point.
Yeah, but I'm like our last show, I think we spent like 5 to 10 minutes breaking down how good Paulo Dybala was with that left foot, the outside of left foot, and like how he did all these different things with it. But if you're a Match of the Day analyst, you're not going to do that because you have the video.
You just point at the big screen.
Yeah, exactly. But you're going to say, like, look at how he made this run, and you'll do that arrow and you'll draw with it. Yeah. Like I think that is a key part of punditry, because otherwise you're just sort of talking into a monitor, and at that point, then you become the negative pundit, I would say. And
to bring it back around to Alexi Lalas, I would say our first interactions with Alexi Lalas, which were back in, like, I want to say 2010.
Yeah.
I think we kind of made a joke about some of.
I made a joke.
You made a joke about some of the analysis that was happening in
he
studio.
Needed improv lessons.
That was it.
They cut back to him in the studio.
Wasn't it because the game, game feed had failed, so they went back to studio, and the guys in the studio weren't ready?
It was, I think, as I recall, it was just him, and it was like he wasn't ready at all, and so he kind of like vamped for a minute, but didn't really know what to say. And then so I said like, oh, well, one thing we learned. I think we did like a things we learned from this game, and I said Alexi Lalas needs improv lessons, and he responded via Twitter with, "I've signed up for improv lessons. Thanks for the advice."
But then we talked to him afterwards. I think he was on the show. We talked about this, right? And we talked about how it's actually very hard to get any good analysis in the very short amount of time that you are given on television. So I almost want to say, for people who criticize pundits, you've got to remember that the sum total of their knowledge is not what you're seeing on screen. It's more like, what can they do in 30 seconds when the red light is on and the commercial's about to roll? And I say that because I think if you and I were on TV and we had to do like 2 minutes at half time, it would not be as good as what we do on this podcast, because we have time to sort of relax and express ourselves and go off on weird tangents about Always Sunny in Philadelphia and Game of Thrones. You know what I'm saying? It's a very different job.
Yes, I would say that my only caveat there would be sometimes I think they know what the question, like when Rebecca Lowe asks Kyle Martino, you can sort of, and not just him, but like generally speaking, I feel like they've probably rehearsed, like, I'm going to ask you about this, I'm going to ask you about this. But if they haven't, that makes it especially hard, because now if it's 0-0 at halftime and I say, Daryl, scoreless still, what do you make of it? Like, that's just you have no idea where to take that, so you can just kind of ramble on and not really know anything.
That's why I think it's tough. You either put someone on the spot where they have to say, like, well, I wish there'd been more goals, but there were no goals, and that means it's 0-0. Have I filled time? Is it over yet? Or you pre-script it, and then it's missing that sort of, like, that potential of, I don't know, there's like an electricity when something's in the moment, right? It's why Saturday Night Live is so captivating in a way. It's why we don't script any of this show except like a list of topics.
This is all pre-recorded and pre-written. But I also think
even that part's very.
But I also think it lends itself to being a blowhard at that point, because then, because if I say to you, you know, is this player, is he the one that's going to solve all their problems? Like, that's not, it's a yes or a no. Like, you can't say, like, well, you know, I mean, I could see it being good, but, you know, they've got a lot of other, like either way, you can't really hedge it. You have to do yes or no. And then you have to back that up, and it becomes this sort of like, oh, Daryl Grove now hates this player. Yeah. So I think that's also where you get into it. It's kind of like maybe the questions are the problem here. So I'm just saying, ask better questions. Everyone in the world, always. But
nuanced answers take much more time, and there's a commercial break coming.
I'm also just going to say
we already did ask.
I actually mean that. That's the root of conversation is asking questions.
Is it?
Ask more questions. Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah. That's the best way to go, man. Ask questions.
I was asking questions.
I know, I'm with you. See? But now we're talking, now we're laughing, now you're clapping, now everything's fun.
Anything else to add on pundits before we move on to something equally as exciting and beautiful?
Nothing to add. So let's go on to Golazo.
Golazo! So,
I like that we both made it Italian, even though it's not.
What does Golazo mean, and why is it called what it's called?
It is a very good goal, an excellent goal, a great goal. And from what I understand, goal, G-O-L, in Spanish, is goal.
Oh, yeah.
And then I think there are like 4 different ways like to interpret the azzo ending, but I think the easiest way to explain it is just that it's the superlative. So if it's if you're a jerk, it makes you a major jerk is one I had, but it can like intensify other things. Yeah, if you're a gato, then a gatazo is a large cat.
Yeah.
But in this situation...
You've researched this, right?
I've definitely researched this. Well, yeah, so a
Did
goal...
you misinterpret the show notes?
Sure did. Thought we were both doing that. Thought after the break we were both researching everything, so I was ready. Yes, so in the end it becomes like a great goal, an amazing goal as a golazo.
I found the same thing. Anything... it seemed to be, especially in South American Spanish, some of these aren't even official words, but azzo is a suffix that makes something bigger. So you went with cat, I went with dog. There's a perro is a dog. Perazzo is a big dog.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think my other favorite interpretation or like way of explaining it is that in the superlative sense, azzo makes things that are common uncommon. So, for example, a car, caro, becomes like a carazzo is a very expensive, souped-up, amazing car.
If it's got like gull wings that pop up.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that. I like that too. But I like that more because it does make, like, goals are fairly common in soccer. They have to be, otherwise it's a very boring game.
Some people would disagree, but
fair enough. Yeah, the people who want to change it so that offside rules are more favorable.
Or people just refuse to watch it.
Yeah, that too. But then, like, a goal is common. Golazo is, like, the most uncommon of goals. It's the most amazing of goals.
This is why this is especially good. It also has a third meaning that I found, which azzo can also be a suffix which means to strike.
I saw that.
I think it's codo, C-O-D-O, is the elbow. Yep. But corazzo is to get struck with the elbow.
Yeah.
So, but if you think of all the things we've just described, right? It's something that's big, it's something that's a strike, and it's something that's kind of incredible, like this amazing car. Like, all those things make it perfect, that when you see a brilliant goal, and honestly, when I hear Golazo, I think of something from like 35 yards going really fast.
My watch agrees.
But that's my sort of almost imaginary definition of Golazo.
Well, it's funny.
It combines those three things, right? Big, strike, and sort of just impressive.
Well, and then you could add a fourth one, because there is a fourth one. Atzo can imply suddenness or brevity. So like a ducha is a shower. Duchazo is a quick shower. So, again, a golazo could be a very quick goal. It could be a shot when you don't see it coming that flies into the back of the net. Quick and brief.
So here's the interesting thing. Golazo is a Spanish phrase, Spanish language phrase, right? There's also a Portuguese language phrase, which is, I think, just with a C with the thing on top. I forgot what it's called, sorry.
Sure.
Which is golazo, which is kind of the same thing, right? And I think many, many, many other English people who came of age in the 90s thought until today, until this morning when I did this research, that Golazo is an Italian phrase. And it's all James Richardson's fault.
I can understand that, but for other people who don't get that, can you explain?
So in the early 90s in England, there was a football show, an Italian highlights show, fronted by James Richardson of Guardian Football Weekly and now the Totally Football Show fame, that was Italian Serie A highlights in the early 90s, right? And it was everyone in England was excited because Gazza was playing in Italy for Lazio, so it was this big thing everybody wanted to watch every week, right? And in the theme music, it ended with Gazza celebrating in his Lazio jersey and a commentator shouting, "Go Lazio!" And it sounded a little bit like "Go Lazio." And apparently this was a deliberate thing to make people think that they were celebrating a Lazio goal.
Tricksters
Yeah,
are there.
but it's also, it seems English people are so sort of, myself included, so unaware of the differences between, like, say, Spanish and Italian, that you would just assume it's an Italian phrase.
And Homer Simpson, who, when he was Mr. X, wrote that they're the same language. I will say that this is a good example of Bill Burr's theory that you got to hang out with other people. Because I have known that it was a South American term since I was 15 years old when I met my half-Peruvian friend Vasily.
Okay.
Who would scream that every time he scored a goal ever on the field or in FIFA.
I'm going to guess even if it was a tap-in. I know Vas. He'll run around screaming Golazo for a far post tap-in.
He absolutely will.
Even if he was offside.
Yes. So that's... I mean, you're not wrong, and you are right. Yes, so just hang out with other people. You learn more terms.
There we go. I can't just sit in my. Well, to be fair, I was very, very young. I wasn't meeting Russian Peruvian men.
I mean,
in the early 90s.
I mean, that's your fault, right there.
All right, we have one more phrase.
Sure,
Taylor. It's kind of related to Golazo, but it's a lot more English. Some people are asking, or one person has asked. Only one person asked this, to be clear. Why, when there is an outstanding goal, which the Spanish might call golazo, do people say decent? They just say decent, which is a term that usually means average. So why do people say decent when what they mean is that's an incredible goal?
So since you're English, this is one I have not researched. Shall I give you my guess?
Yeah, please do.
I mean, I'm going to say, first of all...
I'll say this, my answer won't be satisfying, so don't worry if yours isn't either.
Fair. I'm going to say, I mean, it's dramatic understatement. Decent finish. Like, we say that all the time. But I'm going to say that probably is born out of being against something. So I think, like, the first time I remember hearing... that term would be
decent?
like 70s punk bands. I feel like I remember in interviews being like, it's a decent show. Or like just little
meaning it was an excellent show.
Yeah, so I feel like maybe it's like a counterculture sort of like, we're not going to say it's awesome. Like, to me, it's the same as Americans like in the 80s, like late 80s, early 90s going with like bad meaning good, decent meaning amazing.
Or wicked.
Yeah. Sure.
If you're in the Northeast. So that's pretty much it.
Cool meaning hot.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
it comes from, I think, the British reserve to not get too excited about things.
Well, that too, yeah.
Right, so it's like that understated way, dramatic understatement.
You're a stoic people.
Yeah, of like saying, it's a decent strike, like, and not wanting to get too excited about it.
See, if you want to do that properly, though, I feel like it's got to be like,
that's what I do.
Decent strike.
But there's also the thing of, and this is a very English thing as well, of not over celebrating your own goal. So you know what I mean? There's a thing, not own goal, over celebrating a goal that you've scored. So if someone says like, I heard you scored this really good goal last week, you'd be like, it was decent. And it's also that thing of, have you seen, I've seen a lot of English players do this, where you hit like a goal from distance and you just sort of kind of react casually as if like, there's no big deal, it's all right.
Yeah.
So I think it's that British reservedness that we're just not the type of people to go around celebrating with our arms all over the place because we don't want people to know that we have emotions.
Yeah. I find it strangely hilarious and awesome that, like, you're not wrong with anything you've said, but it is amazing to be like, British people aren't ones to just, like, run around being loud, being in people's faces. I mean, yes, that, like, we did kind of occupy, like, most of the world for a very long period of time, but still.
Kind of quietly.
I think those people who were occupied might disagree.
Have you heard the Eddie Izzard bit about that?
No.
His whole thing about British colonialism was that they would go places and be like, do you guys have a flag? And if the people were like, no, they'd be like, well, we got this one.
Hooray!
See, flag, that's it, done.
That's one way to explain what happened, sure.
Yeah, that's the friendliest possible way to explain it.
I think so.
But I will say, when I score a goal, I'm celebrating hard.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know what I do when I score. I think I don't do anything. I think I just jog back. But when other people score, I then get very animated.
Yeah.
So, maybe it's just your Britishness rubbing off on me.
That must be it.
A jolly good goal is what I usually say.
Jolly good goal.
And then I bow for some reason.
Will you please say that next time I score?
Sure. While drinking tea. I saw a thing, while we're on the subject of random tangents, I saw a great thing on Reddit which describes me perfectly, which is how to make tea. And it's like boil water, like pour water into cup, add tea bag, forget. And that's how I am with this. And then forget you made tea, come back 10 minutes later.
I mean, you got it wrong anyway. It's teabagging first, then you pour the boiling water on top.
Is that how you do it? I guess that's how I do it too.
Right.
Yeah. That's how I do it too. Here's my question, though.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep going with tea for a second. Do you have the anxiety that I have that, like, you haven't gotten all the tea out of the bag? Like, I always feel like I have to, like, squeeze it to make sure.
Yeah, no, you use the spoon to squeeze it before you take it out.
But how do you squeeze it against the side? But what if the water's too high then? Aren't you just squeezing the tea into the water, but then the water's going to continue to saturate the tea? It's a whole big thing. Tea's difficult.
I feel it's best not to overthink it.
The Turks have this the best with the double boiler. That's the way to go with it.
Yeah, the Turks have it down.
I'm sure they're the only ones who use that. And not at all the first people I saw use it when making tea.
All right, so that's the end of our terminology. We did the 6.5 phrases today, terminology 401. We will do more in the future. There'll be a link in the show notes where you can submit phrases you would like explained. But before you do, please go to totalsoccershow.com/terminology where you can see the phrases that have already been explained, such as the numbers. The numbers have been explained.
They sure have.
Final segment, Tyler.
It's more tea talk? Because I do have more questions about tea, genuinely.
Let's do them off air.
Okay, fine. Scouting then?
Yes.
Okay. We've got many reports. I'm not even going to try to count them. I'm just going to get to them. First one comes from Clay Jenkins, scouting Jadon Sancho, the 17-year-old English left winger for Borussia Dortmund. That was an excited inhale. Be prepared to be disappointed.
The future of
Sancho has not been listed in the matchday squad since his $8 million euro, I'm not sure which one, moved from Manchester City. Clay hopes that that changes soon, or that Sancho gets a loan moved in the near future, as he would very much like to actually be able to report something. Clay also blamed you for his lack of interesting reports.
So my guess is that Jadon Sancho is going to play with the Borussia Dortmund U19s. So that's where I would be looking. Check the U19s, see if he's playing down there. In terms of Dortmund's first team, we need to be more worried about Yarmolenko taking Pulisic's spot, getting 2 assists.
We've already talked about this.
I'm still on it.
I'm not afeared.
I'm afeared. All right, next up, Todd Ito is scouting Takefusa Kubo, the 16-year-old Japanese attacking midfielder for FC Tokyo's U18s. This is the kid that's also played for the U17s and the U20s already, right? Takefusa scored the only goal in a 1-0 victory over Ichiritsu Funabashi High School in the Prince Takamaro tournament, which it turns out is basically the J-League U18s.
There you go. Tom Gaffney scouting James Sands, 17-year-old American defender / midfielder for NYCFC. James was named in the U.S. U17 23-man roster ahead of the U17 World Cup.
Wait, do we have the official roster?
I think, I'm sorry. I think we're still down to 20. No,
training camp.
It goes to 21.
I see.
So we have 23 now. They've cut it down from 26, I think, to 23, and then to 21 eventually.
So 2 must leave.
And also, don't worry, because the streak continues for Darryl Grove. It remains to be seen what position he will be playing for this side. He was named the best 11 of the CONCACAF Championship earlier this summer as a center back, but played 2 matches in the Prague Youth Tournament, alternating with Chris Durkin at defensive midfield, and 1 match at center back, the disastrous 4-0 loss to Japan.
Ooh.
Yes, so we shall see if he gets included. And then on Sunday, James made his professional debut for NYCFC in a 1-1 draw with Colorado. He came in for Andrea Pirlo in the 56th minute and looked extremely comfortable on the ball.
Unlike Andrea Pirlo in recent weeks. Justin Miller is scouting Richardly Basel. He's gone.
Yeah.
The 20-year-old Dutch midfielder for Wolfsburg, Richardly Basel.
I've been hanging out with little kids too much. That genuinely cracked me up.
Justin says, after getting consistent minutes for Wolfsburg at the end of last season, he was Bundesliga's Young Player of the Month in March 2017. Bazoer is no longer starting for the first team and has not played for the Netherlands full national team since 2016. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Seems like we have a player sort of slipping down the ranks.
Not
Keep at it, Justin. If things get really bad, maybe we can switch out your scout, but keep an eye on him for now.
In the meantime, Keith Kalmbach scouting Federico Swervi Valverde, the 19-year-old Uruguayan midfielder on loan at Deportivo La Coruña from Real Madrid. Valverde has played in 2 of Deportivo's 4 La Liga matches this season, a 4-2 loss to Real Sociedad and a 2-1 loss to Real Betis. In that second game, or Betis, I guess, I got in trouble for this one earlier. In the second game, he was sort of directly responsible for the losing goal. With the score tied 1-1, Valverde tried to dribble around a defender, but was dispossessed, and the resulting counterattack put Betis ahead.
Oh, the naivete of youth.
I'm saying Betis. It wasn't just the dribble, but also the fact that he was so out of position after the turnover that Betis essentially had an open field in front of them.
Oof. Richie Garcia is scouting Emerson Hyndman, the 21-year-old American midfielder for AFC Bournemouth. Emerson still hasn't been included in the first team this season, but he continues to get minutes for the U21 side, most notably this past weekend when he went the full 90 in a 3-1 win over Wigan Athletic. Oh, I want more for Emerson Hyndman. He should have gone on loan at the end of the transfer window.
Or never gone to Bournemouth, one or the other.
Oh, yeah.
Tim Higgins scouting Gianluca Busio, 15-year-old American attacker for Sporting KC's U19s.
Yeah.
That's a disparity. On Saturday, Busio started for the SKC U19s and went the full 90 in a 2-1 victory over FC Dallas's U19s, notching the opening goal in the 27th minute.
And an update on this. I think we've already featured this in a previous scouting report from Tim, but Busio, I think, got the homegrown player contract. That's why he's sort of...
Second youngest player in MLS history, I believe.
There we go. Vutran is scouting Mahmoud Dahoud, the 21-year-old German midfielder for Borussia Dortmund. Dahoud accomplished a number of achievements this past weekend against Köln, says Vu, including making his first Bundesliga start, playing the full 90 for the first time with Dortmund, and recording his first assist in the 69th minute. The assist put Dahoud's intellect and skill on display as he found his way into open space at the top of the box, dribbled past the defender, and slipped a clever ball to Max Philippe, who did the rest by cleanly chipping the keeper. I've seen this goal, and that is exactly what happened.
There we are. Josh Cooper scouting Henry Onyekuru, 20-year-old Nigerian winger/striker on loan at Anderlecht from Everton. Onyekuru started on the bench against Kortrijk. Why not? And Anderlecht continued to struggle, going down 2-1. And then Onyekuru came on in the 64th and scored the equalizer in the 76th.
Go on, Henry.
The match ended 2-2, and Anderlecht now sit 9th in the Jupiler League.
Having not seen that game, I'm going to confidently say start him next game.
Yeah, I'd say so.
John Crispin is scouting Pakamani Malambi, the 20-year-old South African winger for ... Okay, seems like there's news in this report.
There is indeed.
Pac-Man, as we call him, as John calls him, earned himself a transfer from Bidvest Wits to Egyptian giant Al Ahly for a fee of approximately $1.5 million, which is rumoured to be the largest ever transfer fee for Al Ahly. This is interesting. On his 20th birthday, September 12th, which is also John's birthday, happy birthday, John, last week, a week today, right? Malambi scored a brace for the club, that's 2 goals, in their 6-0 win against second division opponent El Gona. It was an encouraging beginning for the youngster and personally exciting for John because he could finally see highlights.
Yes, there's actual video footage of this goal.
All right, so we know Al Ahly, big team in Egypt, right?
Yep. And Daryl Grove used the term brace. If you don't know what that means, go look at our other terminology shows. We've explained it before. Colin Bish, and yes, more gestures from Daryl. Nicely done. Those will totally transfer onto the podcast.
It's for you. It's just for you, buddy.
Colin Bish, scouting Eric Williamson, 20-year-old American winger/forward for the University of Maryland. I'm getting a lot of hyphenate players, or hyphenate positions. Williamson had a goal and an assist in the Terps' 2-0 win over Penn State this weekend. His goal came when he out-athleticed the defense, sprinting past them and coolly slotting past the keeper.
So when I did the US Future 11 with Travis Clark, Eric Williamson was his pick to be next up at a national team position. I believe he's possibly... he is qualified to be a DC United homegrown player if they want to take him. So this kid could have a future in MLS, in pro soccer, really, really soon.
Yeah, and it seems like DC United, as ever, can use some help in the attacking section of the field. So why not? Get him in.
What Ariola can't
Get him on that plane from Maryland to DC.
I think he could just drive.
Nope.
Jeff Markman is scouting Reece Nelson, the 17-year-old English midfielder for Arsenal. Reece made his competitive first-team debut in last Thursday's Europa League tilt, good word, against FC Köln, coming on in the 83rd minute with Arsenal leading 3-1. He then started for Arsenal's U23s in their 1-0 win over Leicester City, as I believe some people call it, less than 24 hours later. I'm going to correct that to fewer than 24 hours later.
And it's actually Leicester. Thank you. Russell Varner scouting Hugo Arellano, the 19-year-old American defender for the LA Galaxy. Daryl is cringing.
We saw him
Arellano
recently.
started for the Galaxy in their 4-0 loss to Toronto FC,
Sure did.
playing as a left center back and a back three. He had an up and down performance. I'm going to say mostly down, conceding a bad foul that, and then he conceded that foul from the free kick. He kept Drew Moore on side for Toronto's opener.
So yeah, if you didn't make it all the way through to the very end of our most recent weekend review show, because this is one of the last games we reviewed, this was a free kick by Victor Vasquez that took, is it Kempin in goal for LA Galaxy? Really took him by surprise, back off the post, and then Drew Moore scored that diving header. I didn't realise at the time Arellano gave the foul away and kept Drew Moore on side.
Yeah, and I think to Russell's point was that like the entire LA Galaxy team was sort of caught unaware by this sequence.
Yeah.
So he wasn't sure, nor am I, whether or not that's like really. It's not like Arellano was standing 10 yards behind the wall and just not paying attention.
Right.
It was sort of everybody was still getting set, and I'm guessing he was the deepest.
Did give the free kick away.
He did. I feel like a lot of time when we watched this game, it was just sort of like, oh no, that wasn't good. Oh no, that wasn't good. And a lot of that was like the entire LA Galaxy performance. But I remember a couple other times that Arellano looked suspect.
He was under assault from that Toronto attack. Right? Imagine if Josie and Giovinco had been there, though.
Yikes.
I'm going to add to Arellano's scouting report, at least he's not Siani.
Yes. that is well said and accurate. Yeah, I mean, that is worth noting that like he's not going anywhere, is he?
For LA Galaxy.
I mean, just in the sense that like usually if a young player comes up, gets that kind of minutes with the first team, and then it doesn't go well, or the result doesn't go well, maybe he gets sent back down. It's not like the other players cover themselves in glory. So we are where we are.
He's not to blame.
No.
Up next, Josh Bonet is scouting Sam Johnston, the 24-year-old English goalkeeper on loan at Aston Villa from Manchester United. Are you familiar with this player, Taylor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
I am. He's the goalkeeper that's never going to play a minute for Manchester United. That's not true, but it doesn't...
A lot of loans. I remember seeing his Wikipedia page with a lot of loans on it.
I mean, David De Gea is there. And I think roughly the same age, if not the exact same age. Maybe he's like a year older, but...
I forget De Gea's young.
Yeah, he is not like 38, and Johnston is waiting in the wings.
I'm still saying England's future. Johnston made his 8th straight league start for Aston Villa against Barnsley and had the best kind of a day a goalkeeper can have. A boring one. He looked slightly shaky when dealing with crosses, but nothing too disastrous.
I'll say this before I realized, which I should have known. I read this as like he was just an Aston Villa player. So when Josh sent this report, he said like, but these are the types of errors that maybe will make Gareth Southgate question giving him a senior call up. Mm-hmm. And I did have this like, is the starting goalkeeper for Aston Villa really that close to getting a call up? But then when you think about it, of like, oh, he's an actual Manchester United player. Mm-hmm. That is weird that it changes that way. I don't think that's just my bias. I think that's the bias of pretty much every England manager. Is that fair? Yeah.
Let's say Ashley Young got a lot more call-ups when he moved from Aston Villa to Man United.
Yes.
And he was no better of a player from like 1 month to the next.
He was. As soon as he put on a brighter shade of red, he got way better. Mike Spinelli, he's scouting George Bello, the 15-year-old American left back for Atlanta United. Bello has been named to the 23-man roster for the 6-day U17 camp in Bradenton. Mm-hmm. Only 21 players will go to India for the U17 World Cup, and the 15-year-old Bello is up against bigger and older defenders.
This is why you said, Daryl, earlier on. I see.
Even if he doesn't go to India, this year's USA Development Academy Player of the Year is one of the brightest stars of his age for both USMNT and Atlanta United.
New Paolo Maldini. Victor Savage is scouting Ricardo Kishner, the 22-year-old Dutch winger, on loan at Den Haag from Lazio. Kishner, a former Den Haag youth player, got an assist during his debut with the first team in their 2-1 win over Willem II. In their next game against Ajax, Kishner suffered a knee injury. This is but the latest in a series of knee injuries suffered over his career, and this one may keep him sidelined for months. Unfortunately, what was once a promising career seems to be suffering an endless parade of derailments.
Well,
some good writing, Victor Savage.
It is some good writing. Let's move on to a happier report.
Okay.
Just kidding. I think it's equally depressing. Julie Nishimura-Jensen scouting Alan Halilovic, the 21-year-old Croatian midfielder for Las Palmas. After an inauspicious start to the season, a straight red card in the first game, resulting in a 5-match ban, things look better for our muscly Croatian midfielder when he made the starting lineup for Sunday's league game against Athletic Bilbao. Unfortunately, things then got worse as Halilovic was stretchered off in the 37th minute with an ankle injury.
Oh no, Alan.
Yeah, bleak times. I remember there was one report where it was like, he scored a goal, he got his debut, he got called up to the senior national team. Those were the days. Yeah. Those were the happier days.
I mean, it's ups and downs, isn't it? Total Soccer Show Scouting Network. It can't all be good news.
It cannot. No. But I am constantly reminded of why I love the Scouting Network because, I really was, because I'm a dork, I spent a good 15 minutes looking at the rosters of teams in the Turkish Super League and the Greek Super League. Yeah. Just because I was like, I wonder what random players have found their way there. And the answer is a lot of players, and I imagine some of them are in the Scouting Network. I know they are, because Jason Denayer plays for Galatasaray.
Isn't it Besiktas? No, it's Besiktas that has a load of players. Yeah,
including Pepe and Gary Medel. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Oh, should we watch more Turkish Super League?
I mean, we can now. It's on BN.
Is it really? Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, because interesting. Yeah. Maybe we'll watch one of the big Istanbul derbies when that comes around.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it might be Besiktas Galatasaray this year if the table is any indicator.
That's interesting.
Same side of the continent. So
Fenerbahce not so good this year. That's what I'm getting from this conversation.
Right now, they'll always end up being good.
All right. Thank you to Clay, Todd, Tom, Justin, Keith, Richie, Tim, Vu, Josh, John, Colin, Jeff, Russell, Josh, Mike, Victor, and Julie.
I could have done it better.
Could you?
I could not have. You did it very well. You're very good at reading names quickly.
Thank you. That sounded slightly patronising.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Thank you to everyone who sent in scouting reports, and thank you to everybody who is supporting the Total Soccer Show through a subscription at totalsoccershow.com/join. We really, really, really appreciate it.
We certainly do.
I feel like we say it a lot, but we genuinely mean it.
Is that why you chose to add 4 more realies onto it?
Yes.
That would really get it across?
I should also add, if you want to support the show, but you don't want to do any scouting, because it is some work, as in you have to check the news and send the report via totalsoccershow.com/report. You can also choose to be a silent scout. Can you guess what that is, Taylor?
It's a person who doesn't send in a scouting report.
There you go. Yeah,
I have no ironic answer. I'll just give the actual answer.
It's essentially you support the show, but you do not. You're not assigned a player to scout. Mm-hmm. People who are looking for their player to scout. I've got a lot of itchy feet emails recently. I will be sending out assignments this week. I'll make sure if you've requested it recently, I'll make sure you get your player this week. I promise. Where's my hand?
I think where you think your heart is.
Am I wrong?
A little bit.
In a bit?
A little bit.
There you go. Now my hand is on my heart. So once again, it's totalsoccershow.com/join. Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me and to educate me about anatomy today.
My pleasure. Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners.
Even though you didn't educate me about anatomy, but still, the other part applies.
Listeners, thank you for listening. We'll be back again tomorrow.